Jean-Luc, we've known each other for a long time. Your
Yes.
recording of the Franck Symphony is now considered in many ways a reference for many people. And you have been fortunate to have Rosenthal as a professor, who himself was a student of Maurice Ravel, if I understood.
Yes.
So you have a lot of the legacy to share with us, not only your own particular insights and experience conducting these two masterpieces. So without further ado, everyone, je vous invite. We have Jean-Luc Tingaud and our French Masterworks. Merci beaucoup, Jean-Luc.
Thank you, John, and welcome to everyone. So we're going to talk about those two major French symphonies. And even if they're French, you will see that they are linked to the German tradition in some way, because as you know, Sain-Saëns was very, very close to Franz Liszt. And the inspiration of the symphony in many aspects comes as well from the German tradition. And if we look at the Dover score that you probably all have, we have this beautiful painting of the Cathedral by Monet. And in fact, I always think of those two symphonies as an architecture first. And of course, a cathedral, because the organ is the majestic instrument in the cathedral. And here we have the organ in the Saint-Saëns Symphony. So my first advice, what I always do when I conduct this symphony, is have a moment with the organist to listen to the organ in the hall, because every time it will be different, you know, every instrument, every acoustic is unique. So just take a moment with the organist, you know, to ask for the sound that you want. He or she will be very happy to discuss, you know, the registers. It's fascinating, the organ as instrument. And I think it's the core of this symphony to decide what you want to hear playing together with the orchestra. So that's my first advice. And then you will not lose time during rehearsal asking, oh, could you please change this register in the organ? No, everything is already fixed. He knows what you want, and you will get it, and it will be the core of the inspiration to create this world of sound of this fascinating symphony. So let's start from the top of the first movement. Usually my rehearsal technique is that I like to read in the first movement the full exposition without stopping the orchestra, and then once you get to the start of the development, you can stop and give your first comments on the exposition. That's a good way, I think, to get this symphony started. Just one thing before we go into the details is the orchestration. For both of those two symphonies, we need the full strings. That's very important because they have a massive orchestration in terms of brass, organ. It's all about contrast. You know, you want really to have a supportive string section. That's very, very important. So if you conduct this symphony, ask for the full strings. Okay, so let's start from the top of the first movement of Saint-Saëns. And this adagio, which is just a couple of bars, is essential to the full spirit of the symphony. And it looks easy, but it's not. And you know, the first oboe is always a little nervous to start. So, you know, he has to be confident, you know, smile, be sure. And even if it's very long notes in the strings, I suggest you keep beating very, very gently in 6, you know, just that everybody knows where we are going. And it helps also the strings to pace the bow because they know exactly what you want. What is important is really to pace the diminuendo because the crescendo is easy, but the diminuendo on the third bar needs a real change of color here. And that's what will bring the oboe in the line. Then it's repeated one octave below. Oh yes, before we go that, the silence is so important, because the silence will give you, you know, the attention of the audience. So you let the oboe finish the sound when he wants, as long as he wants, and then there's another fermata, as you can see in the silence. So don't rush into it. Breathe, give the clarinet, the bassoon, and then a nice gentle entry, and then everything will be fine. I like, in French music, I like the vibrato in the winds. So the flutes in this register, when the three flutes can play with vibrato, it's so beautiful. Okay, now we're going to the transition to the allegro moderato. Just look at the contrabass, give you a nice space, you know, and they will play the pizzicato by themselves. So it's not difficult. Just to look at the timpani, just to look, it's enough, because he listens to the bass. Bom, 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 bom. I give a little accent to the high notes. Ba, ba, bum, bim. A little accent in the attack and in the vibrato as well, because it's like a question mark. And it also goes, gives a nice mirroring with the accent in the winds. And then ya pam 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 pam, and it's the same tempo more or less. So nothing to be worried about in the start of the strings. You know, if you're very clear, you go in the same tempo. Now you have to tell the strings how you want this articulation. Do you want spiccato? Do you want on strings? What I suggest is to have it brushed, because it doesn't work with the real spiccato. It's not the idea, really, you know. So a nice brushed bow is, to me, the ideal, except for the cello and the contrabass, who needs more articulation, pa, pa, pam, because it reminds the, it's with the timpani, so it needs a very clear articulation here. So then this movement goes smoothly in a steady tempo. So it's not something it's a moment where you can relax, give the direction to the winds and cueing them. An important thing here is that the crescendo is written only for the winds. So I suggest you insist for having no crescendo in the strings, and you will see it's like something is expanding in the winds while you keep this murmur in the strings, and then they will be happy to do the crescendo later. Let's move to figure A. Nothing special, of course. You give the entry to the trumpets, to the trombones before A. And then make sure you get a real pianissimo, 8 bars after A. And now let's move, because we have a lot to talk about. Let's move to the second motif, which is after the figure B. So here you have strings and winds playing together. I would say make sure that the link between the contrabasses and the winds is really perfectly connected. That's the secret, because the rest of the strings, they will know how to play that. So keep always an eye on the connection between the winds, the timpani, and the contrabass. The crescendo into D is a steep crescendo. So this is something that you will help a lot with your left hand, okay? that you need to go here to a real fortissimo. And don't forget the sforzato 3 bars after D, because that's really the culmination in the strings. Then the accents are a little less. You see 6 bars after D. We arrive now to letter E, and this is a moment very, very calm. So once you get here, just have the winds playing softly and connected with the strings. Letter F gives you a little more flexibility. This is a more lyrical moment where you don't have to be so, how can I say, so strict with the tempo. That's a moment where you can give a little more expansion, you know, to the phrase. 3 bars after F, the third horn has a phrase that he's the only one to play. So just make sure that this comes out nicely. And you have the same 8 bars later in the clarinet. So you see that in the orchestration, the clarinet and the second flute. So you know it's not the principle of the section. So it's important that you look or smile at them so that you make sure that this particular line comes out nicely. The strings pianissimo before letter G. It's 8 bars before letter G. It's really like a trembling, you can give here an image, you know, like something in French we would say frémissement, like something really starting to boil, and you will get here a very specific sound to change. Since in this first movement the tempo doesn't change much, you have to create colors. You have to work on the colors to, you know, to make things really interesting and always captivating. Now we are on letter G, where we have this marcato in the trombones. Conduct them. I would say here it's important that you are totally focused on the articulation and the conducting of the trombones. Beep, 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 pop, pop, bum. Okay. And if you get a very clear rhythm here, all the rest of this tutti will be going very, very nicely. It's a very Schumannian moment. At the beginning, I was mentioning how, in a way, this symphony is from German inspiration. And there are lots of moments where you hear Schumann and Mendelssohn. So this is something you can mention. You have to tell the players the sound that you want to hear, because they all know the notes and the symphony, but they want to have inspiration from you. So talk about the sound and shape the sound that you want to hear.
Jean-Luc, may I ask you a question? Considering the sound and with the strings playing as they do with all these 16th notes, do you recommend a more alla corda, on the string feeling for the strings in order to achieve the sound you want, or more of a spiccato feeling?
From this point in the forte alla corda, definitely on string, yes. And especially in this big tutti before figure H, and when you have the triplets on the repeated note, yada-da-da-da-da-dam, it can be very, very, very strong and with all the bow. Yes, as I definitely recommend here on string, which is in contrast with the beginning, which needs a more clear articulation. Yes, figure H is a strong moment for the strings. really they can play out as much as they want, you know, show the full power of the strings here. It's a beautiful moment. You see, you have a sharp diminuendo coming to this suspended and strange moment, pum 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 pum, like a heartbeat in the strings. And here, very short, the pianissimo, pum 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 pum. Do not rush, never rush this moment. Okay, always a steady pace. Change the colors, work on colors, work on articulation, but please keep always steady because it's so much syncopated that we would lose the feeling. It has always give a clear beat. You have to think of what the players need from you and be there when they need. So for instance, before letter I, use your left hand to show the crescendo in the strings and just to look and breathe with the winds. You don't need more because they listen. Pum pum pim pim pum 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 pim pim. You know, since you have a steady tempo, you can use a lot your left hand to shape the phrases, to give the entries. You don't have to worry so much about your right hand. At J, the harmonies are so beautiful. So just enjoy. Make sure you're very steady in the cantabile of the violins because the violas, they have to be very sure, you know, you cannot really move the tempo here. So we are, I'm going a bit through this. Just to mention, if you use the Dover edition, there are some wrong notes. Like you see, if you are here in page, we are at page 30. I don't know if you have the same pages, but it's just after letter J, the third bar. There's a wrong note in the violas, you will see. And the 5 bars later, there's a wrong note in the cello. So that's another advice. Check the materials that the orchestra is playing, you know, before you arrive, especially if it's a new orchestra, because it's always important to have a clear and precise part for the musicians. So that's something I can always give as a good advice, you know. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on the first movement because it's not the most difficult one. So in the development, now we go to the recap, which is at letter M. And here at letter M, I suggest you use a much bow for the strings because you need a lot of sound and it's spectacular here. The brass should be very short, pum, with the timpani, you know, to give just the punctuation of the phrase in the strings. And then give to the woodwinds 4 bars after M a large sign that they can really play out this, which is so Schumann or Mendelssohn-like. So be very, very generous in this fortissimo and keep the fortissimo here. You see, no diminuendo. It's important that through this whole section, you inspire the players to play a broad sound, a very, very, very broad sound that is culminating with this, we would say in French, fanfare before, and trumpets and horns can play as loud as they want here. It's really, I mean, don't necessarily look at them to encourage them, but they have to know that they can play this really out, and this is spectacular. And we will arrive to the first fortissimo of the piece, which is page 47 if you're using Dover, and it's after letter N, you see the 3F, the fortissimo. Nothing special. I mean, it's the culmination of the movement, but it will in a way come by itself. I mean, it's not something that you have to show specifically, because we're coming from such a long fortissimo period that it will expand by itself. What is more important, and I would really show with the left hand, is the sharp diminuendo in the brass. Do you see? From 3F to P to piano in one bar. And they need you for this. And it's very important that you shape the diminuendo with the different registers of the orchestra. It's so well written. I mean, trust the score, trust what the composer wrote, because he knows exactly. Don't change, because it works, it works. Trust what he wrote, do it, and you will see that really works. Trust the dynamics. Even if it's different between winds and strings, trust what he wrote. Yes. Then it calms. Everything calms down. It's beautiful to prepare the entry of the organ. So keep a steady tempo. Just let things, settle down nicely. And we arrive to the poco adagio. You have the oboe with this question mark, that is the mirroring of the beginning. Beautiful pizzicati, always vibrato, vibrato in the winds, vibrato in the pizzicati, and the two horns. So it's not easy for intonation, it's something you can fix between. When you work on intonation with the winds, always use the contrabass, because that's the base, and that's the reference for everyone. So if you have a good contrabass section that it plays really nicely in tune, then it will help a lot to fix the intonation issues that might happen. The second horn needs to play maybe a little more than pianissimo here to support. And the full bar of rest can be long. Don't be afraid of silence. Don't be afraid of silence. That's the dramatic, and the silence is part of the music, and we should always, cherish the silence. So this bar with the fermata can be as long as you want. Something you discuss with the organist, and then you let him play by himself, and you get on the third bar. Be sure you have a good eye contact with the organ. That's very important, something you need to fix in advance also. And this moment is so beautiful in the cantabile of the strings. It's also very useful to have the complete string section, because as you know, the more strings you have, the more you can get a beautiful pianissimo. So here it's the color, the legato that is important, and the blending of the strings with the organ sound. So enjoy this moment. Show the pianissimo subito after the crescendo. You can just, you don't need to say, just show it, show how much crescendo you want. Show the pianissimo subito with the left hand. Yes, at letter Q, when the winds come in the French repertoire, when you have the many different woodwinds playing the same line, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to achieve? A individual sound mixing? What I usually ask is, I ask the players to have sound that are open, with lots of harmonics. Don't be afraid, to play with a rich sound, because in French music, that's the best blending, I think, even if the line is the same. And you see, if you ask this at letter Q, you will see how the sound is full and shining. So this is a relaxed moment, and we arrive to this chord at letter S. This is something you can rehearse because intonation is not easy. The brass has not played for a long time, and they have to come in the whole intonation. So that's a moment that you can just work a bit here on this chord. Intonation is very important. And we arrive to the famous little canon in the violins. And I suggest also this can be separately rehearsed because it's not totally straightforward. It's very exposed, but so beautiful. When you get to letter U, make sure you get a real triplet, okay? The rhythm here, because usually it can become semi-quavers, and no, we want the triplet. So here, rhythmical, so you conduct the contrabass, and once the comes in with the pits, it goes by itself. So show the music here, shape the phrases. It's a moment where you can be very active, in the same time active, but letting the music evolve and develop by itself. So it's not a difficult moment, but it's a beautiful moment. Work on the colors. Accents. Let's speak about the accents. It's definitely when you have this phrase in or this chromaticism, is definitely left hand expression, and sustain the vibrato. Okay, we arrive to the end of the first movement. I'm going quite fast on this one because it's not the most difficult. The most difficult is the second movement. So just before ending on the first movement, the last pizzicato is very important. Make sure that you phrase and have a clear upbeat for the basses, and they will play a beautiful pizzicato. Let the resonance long, then cut, and listen to the organ, and let the organ go morendo. And then you can start attacca. 1, 2. It's very important that you give a clear upbeat, but not an active one. Otherwise, you might have someone entering. So you give 1 and then energy 2. That's very important. I would say very active rhythmically here. The timpani cuts the strings. You see that? Sostenuto to the second beat, and you can tell the strings you cut with the from the timpani. So once you give the good tempo, I usually do it a little faster than we have a metronome marking, which is 80. I usually do 84 because 80 feels a bit heavy. Then what you need to do is, the strings will play by itself because they know it. And what you need to do is to cue the other instruments. So give the cue to the third trumpet, to the trombones, and then to the bass clarinet and to the contrabassoon. So that's the entries you have to give. And then after letter A, also to the piccolo. Once we get to letter B, it's important to help the second violin and the viola. So I mean, the second phrase here is more important than the main, not the Hauptstimme, but focus more on the Nebenstimme here, I would say. The staccato in the brass asks for very, very short staccato, especially if you are in a resonant hall. This is, you see, after figure B, 8 bars. Pa, 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 pi, pa, pam, very, very short. And all the downbeats in the tutti very short, so that you have the clear dialogue between the pam, tidadam, pam, tidadam in the woodwinds. And now we arrive to the famous presto. So that's for you the moment where all the players are, you know, waiting for the very clear and sure change of tempo. It's not easy, I must say. It's not easy. The risk is that you get nervous and change the tempo before, you know, or this moment you have to change the tempo right on the beat. So be sure, practice your second tempo, be sure of it, and just go to the downbeat of the presto in the previous tempo. On tagadam, 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 pam 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 pam, and then you can be short because it's a piano after and it's only woodwinds. So it's very well written because the brass and the strings finish their thing, and then you start with the woodwinds, the presto. My advice here is to play it fast. It's written fast. I mean, if we trust the metronome markings 138, it's fast. And it's not a problem for the orchestra to play it fast. It would be a problem to play it too slow. So, I mean, it's not a big risk, because if you give a clear and fast upbeat, they will go with you, and they will maybe go a little slower than what you show, but they will play together because they are, I mean, great players and they know how to play together. But you will give this impulse. And it's difficult because you have to give it fast, but you have to give it piano, because that's essential. Here you need a transparent sound, you know, a fairy-like, it's a moment, a magical moment. It's very Mendelssohn-like. It has to be transparent, has to be articulated. So that's the turning point. I want really to stress this, because it's very important that you're sure of what you do here. So now you've done a great transition to the presto. We have a beautiful tempo, and then it's like driving a very, you know, a car in a very fast video game. It's a little bit of this, because this presto is fascinating. But just keep you know, a clear pulse, and not too big, and here, and cue everybody, and everything will be fine. You have the piano coming in, so but you have lots of things. You have the accent in the horns. I mean, trust yourself. Letter D, you don't have to show the crescendo in the strings. They will do it by themselves, and it's piano to mezzo piano, not more. You don't need a big effect here. So yeah, always an eye and an ear on the percussion and triangle, very important. Articulation, and keep it steady. I would say keep it steady. It's so beautiful. It's all about colors, articulations. And when you have the triplets with the such a beautiful phrase, letter G, so this chromatic, just enjoy, and be with the winds. The strings will play, I mean, it's so beautiful, they will play by themselves. Okay, contrast. Look at letter I, this piano subito. Just you're beating here, and suddenly you go here, and you get this piano subito. I mean, it's not nothing special, but it's not easy, this presto. It's the thing. You have the short pa-pam in the brass, so and in the you see after letter I, make sure you have the connection between the brass and the lower strings, and the cello and the contrabass. Good. End of the presto, back to the allegro moderato. So you arrive on the last chord, pam, pam. You don't move, nothing. And then again, you have to give the downbeat where nobody plays. So please, clear, but no energy. One and energy. But you have to give the one, otherwise, you know, yam, pam. Still, one, pa-ta-ta-ta-tam, and it's the same tempo. And when you get to the second presto, it's okay because players know the tempo, and so it's not that difficult. We're speaking about letter O. Yeah, move to in your score to letter O. So it's the same. You finish in the previous tempo, and you just have to follow here. It's not that you need to give a big impulse because we know the tempo already. But always be clear with short movements, you know. Cue the oboe. It's a difficult entry for him. Cue the oboe in the presto, you see. And here we are. Then you have the beautiful lyrical moment, who starts with the second violin after letter Q. And here I go in one, of course. Same tempo, but in one. It's a religioso moment. The allegro moderato goes in two. Is the same beat, okay? Just go in two. And then we arrive to the maestoso. So that's the big moment of game between orchestra and organ. I suggest in the maestoso that the marcato is played with the whole bow. That's really fun. Only forte in the beginning. Then the emphasis goes on the arpeggio of the four hands piano. So it's all about colors here, basically, all about colors. And we get at letter T to the allegro. So here the transition is not difficult because it's the same tempo. And it's a fugato. Build your fugato. I would say les plans sonores. That's very important here. Always tell the players, show the players, that's even better, what you want to hear and how you want to shape your sound. Use your left hand again every time you have to, you know, give a phrasing, a direction. Players need to know where the phrase goes, you know. And here we are. Let's move to letter AA. It's a bit further. It's page 147 of your Dover score. Here, you have a very strong pa-pa-pam, pa-pa-pam in the brass and the winds. So that's why you need the strings to play here a little more than forte. I would suggest already to play fortissimo. Clear, because you need to balance. The risk in this symphony is to have the brass a bit too loud and not enough strings. So always help the strings.
Jean-Luc, the risk of this symphony is that we can look at every little detail. Can I ask that you go to the stringendo? Can we speed up a little bit?
Oh, yes.
Go to the stringendo and how you get into the stringendo. So we'll have a little bit of time for the Franck as well.
For Franck, yes, exactly. So
double F.
Double F. So you will shape the stringendo with the timpani. That's really timpani and contrabass, what is going really to be the bone structure of the stringendo. And it's not, I mean, I write my metronome markings, you know, so that you know how to build. So the first one goes from 92 FF to 138. So it's quite a sharp one, this one. If you keep together, it's not so difficult. If you keep together the timpani and the contrabass, you get all the orchestra played together. That's the secret, okay? First, of course, first violin, but timpani and contrabass. What can I say on this stringendo? And it's not that difficult. Just shape it. There's a moment of the pesante. Yeah, we need to talk about this. You see the pesante at GG. Many conductors stop the tempo here to have it broad. I mean, I don't think you need to slow it down so much. Personally, I would stress on the sforzato, yam pim pam pi, ya pa pe pim pa dim pa, pim pim pam pim pim pam pim. So it gives more flow. That's my advice here in the stringendo, to play the pesante with the sforzato, but not slowing down the tempo. I mean, he would have written it. And then once you get to the sans pressé, of course, steady to the end. And here we are. And of course, the solo timpani and in the last bars, and the chord very long. You decide how many bows you want. Usually I do 2, it's enough. And then it's like the rockets, you know, at Cap Canaveral, going up in the moment. So you can have a gesture that, you know, take all the sound and going up. That's what I suggest. Not cutting down, but, you know, having something, you know, taking off here. That's what I can say about Sain-Saëns.
Bravo, fantastic. Jean-Luc, just a little question that was asked.
Yes.
When you spoke about the working out with the organist in advance to have that contact with them,
Yes.
what would you suggest if you have to have a organist above the orchestra where they have to watch you from a mirror?
Oh, that's usually
and you have absolutely no contact whatsoever with them.
No,
what would you recommend?
It's absolutely usually the case, John, and I actually prefer to have this, you know, the like we have in many halls, and you have to just make sure that he watches you in the mirror and that you always have eye contact with him. So that's why I suggest you have a nice moment with the organist before the orchestra rehearsal, so that at least you know that you are going in the same direction, that you're in contact, and then everybody will be really happy.
And when you say trust the score, speaking of the organ, sometimes you have the organ in the orchestra. You have one of those almost portable organs that are amplified within the orchestra, as opposed to the pipe organ above the orchestra.
Yes.
Have you had a experience in either of those situations, or have they always been the pipe organ above? And how do you balance the sound when you're trusting the score when the organ is in the orchestra?
Well, I remember doing it once in London at Cadogan Hall, where they don't have an organ. So we had to bring like amplification and the sound, and it's not the same. That's not the ideal situation. So I would suggest, you know, playing this symphony with a real organ in a hall that has this organ. You know, that's how it was written for. That's, of course,
Wonderful.
the best situation.
Alors, César Franck.
César Franck. So César Franck is different. In a way, I wanted to mention something before starting, is that Franck wrote a kind of program for the opening of his symphony. And I suggest you find this, you know, it's usually in all the biographies of Franck. It's very interesting because he clearly says, well, I wrote this first theme and then this second theme, and it's and this is, you know, he described his symphony. And in a way, you understand that it's very clear what he wrote. Last time for the recording I was specifically looking at the tonality, at the plan, you know, of all the tonal plan, and it's fascinating. Everything is constructed. It's a perfect architecture. If you look at the thematic of the symphony, everything is already in the first bars. So you start, and it's dark, it has to be dark. Conduct the basses here, conduct the basses, that's my advice. When you get at bar 6 with the first violin, I like to move a bit the tempo forward because it's in a way, it's the premonition of so in a way, it's a bit of light already coming here. Always vibrato in the strings. When you go to the very dark pianissimo notes, it's at the tip of the bow, of course, for viola and cello, the pianissimo, but it's misurato, it's not tremolo. Most of orchestras play tremolo, but it's not. You can ask to play really 32s and they will do it. And you will see how it's like something frémissant. It's a different sound. When you get to letter A, conduct the basis, this chromaticism and the accent. So that's what you conduct here. Before the allegro non troppo, most conductors cut at the crescendo. They cut, then silence, and they start the allegro. I don't think that's the way it should be done. It's possible to keep the fortissimo in the tutti, and then give the cue to the first violin, and they will know what to do. And then it's more dramatic because it's more connected. You will see when you conduct it. Try this and trust it will work. One of the things to be aware of here at the allegro non troppo bar 5 is to help the second voice, the lower strings, because it's a canon and usually they disappear. They're not as strong as the first violins and the second violins. So make sure you balance those two voices. When we have the repeat in F minor, so just the bar before, I go in 4. Second bar of B, I go in 4 because that helps the contrabass to play the cello, I mean, to play the there's a little difference in the repeat in F minor. It's the phrase of the oboe, so I suggest that you insist of this. It cannot be the exact repeat, you know, it cannot be. But first of all, because the tonality is different, but also because there are some details. So focus on those differences. Second, allegro non troppo. And we get to the bridge section. Again, it's a dialogue between two voices. In this symphony, it's not like you would have the main voice and the accompaniment. No. The two voices are important. So make sure we hear clearly the bass line here. You see? I'm talking about the up tempo 8 bars after letter D. Because it's question and answer between the first violin and the lower strings. Before letter E, the crescendo, you have to decide how much crescendo you want, but for sure make a sharp piano subito, like, you know, like Japanese knife, really. Cut the sound here. Let's move to letter G. one of the difficult things in this first movement is how to play these bribes of the phrases that Franck writes and to give them to insert them in the whole shape of the symphony. And it's usually the woodwinds. So all the cadenzas, I would not hold too long, the fermatas. And, you know, what is important is to connect all those segments between letter G and letter H. Intonation is not easy, and you have to be ready to work on intonation. It's not often easy. What I suggest is that you know clearly what is the function of the notes in the chords. Franck is usually perfect chords, you know, but know if it's the bass, if it's the third, or if it's si c'est la quinte. You have to know that to help the players how to balance the chords. Usually it's not a problem of intonation, it's a problem of balance between the instruments. And it does not, in César Franck's symphony, goes by itself. It needs the conductor to work on that. Here we are in the development, letter H. Lots of elements. Give as much clarity in the sound as you can. If you can balance so that we hear all the details, all the voices, that's a great achievement. Ah, yes, there is a tricky moment after letter K. So letter K is very energy. You have to give a lot of energy. It's on string, this string moment. Keep on string, very important. And fortissimo sempre. There's no diminuendo in the first violin, you see? The molto diminuendo is in one bar for the second violin. And then you have this tricky moment between the strings and the winds. So you have the winds playing papam, 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 and often they're late, and the strings have to play ya papam, 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 papam. And of course, the strings, you will help them with a strong second beat, but if they hear the brass not being with you, then there will be a moment of, you know, disconnection. So I suggest you work here with the, I mean, if it doesn't go by itself in the first reading, you can stop and tell the winds that you want more phrasing in this, not vertical, but more phrasing, papam, 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 and then they will play, you know, more in the flow and you will get it. It's important when you stop, say something, and then do it again, that it works on the second time. So be very clear. And if it doesn't work the second time, don't stop. Don't ask for a third time. Okay. Letter M. You have a beautiful pianissimo. So it's a moment where you can make colors. All this symphony is about colors, you know. Some people say that it's a heavy symphony, but it's not. No, you can play on, you know, on the sound so that you make, you put some lights. Imagine a big cathedral, but with light going inside. So different, you know, glass lights, and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece to work on. The recap. The recap is the lento, and this is a canon between the trombones and the trumpets. So you need to balance it. The transition into the recap is often done with the rallentando, but many conductors. I personally keep the tempo because I trust what he wrote. I mean, he was perfectly able to write ritenuto if he wanted to. And in my recording, I play it in tempo, and I think that gives a very, very strong kick into the lento and in the canon. And yes, we will soon move to
Jean-Luc, why don't we move ahead a little bit?
Yes,
I
let's
want to
move
let
on.
everyone know that we will continue after 7 o'clock or 19 heures.
Yeah, let's
For
move
those who speak
to
French. We have plenty of time. If everyone can stay, feel free to stay. If you have a question, please write it in the chats. Don't worry, this will be recorded and you'll be able to see it in the future. Carry on.
Yeah, let's move to the second movement and the beautiful phrase. One thing I want to mention is to have a clear rehearsal plan when you rehearse this symphony. You know, how much time you want to spend on the first movement. And usually I go straight from the first movement to the third movement because it's, in a way, I mean, they are the two pillars of the symphony. And also because the second movement is a special thing to rehearse. So usually I keep it for, like, for instance, after the break, you can start with the second movement, but before the break, you rehearse the two, the first and the finale. But now we go into order for today. Tell the harp how you want to hear the chords. What I usually do is briser, what we say in French, briser. So it's not arpeggiando, but, you know, with the two hands, yapam. And that gives a very special sound blending with the pizzicato. So I strongly recommend to do this. You can talk to the soloist, to the English horn before, you know, in advance, just what's your tempo, which tempo do you feel comfortable, and try to convince him, if you don't like his tempo, you know, to you have to be completely connected. It's beautiful. He can play with vibrato and colors. And the most difficult thing in this movement is, of course, to connect with the scherzo. So I go quite fast to the letter F. And here at letter F, you have to give a very clear start to the first violins. Do not play ponticello like it's done sometimes. It's not ponticello. We don't want the ponticello sound. We just want a very light and energetic pianissimo here. The response in the winds after F is in tempo and only poco rallentando when it's written. It's not good if you drag too much here. Once we get to the real presto, I mean the connected line in the violins, let them play in tempo, and what you need to conduct is the basses and the staccato in the winds. Pam, pam, pim, pam, pam, pam. That's very important. It's the bone structure of the, and that keeps the pace. So focus on this, very important. Then you have this beautiful clarinet, kinds of Brahmsian clarinet or Schubert after letter I, 3 after letter I. Do not play triplet here because the triplets are in the accompaniment, but he has to have a very clear dotted rhythm with a nice phrasing. So much I would like to say, but I'm just going to the important points. After L, like Ludwig, focus on the brass and the woodwinds and tell them how you want to articulate the dots in the slur. That's important. We call it louré in French. And then look at the timpani because he has a beautiful solo in the triplets. Pa-pa-pa-pam, pa-pa-pa-pam. It's a kind of Beethovenian moment. So very rhythmical, very rhythmical. We have this play with major and minor in the flutes at letter M. Personally, I go in tempo. You will hear in many recordings that there can be some rubato. I personally do not do rubato here. I think in French music, as much as you can play on colors, play on dynamics, but do not add too much rubato because it's written very, very precisely. And if you have the right tempo, there won't be any problem to get back the English horn and the bass clarinet to the first motif together. And yes, we are arriving at letter Q, 3 bars before letter Q. It's a turning point in the tonality here, and you have the bass clarinet holding the notes. You see, you cut the orchestra, and you need to listen to that note. So this fermata, I mean, it's only a third beat rest, but you can hold it a little bit more because this note is becoming the third of the next tonality. So D major. So it's important that everybody listens to it. So something you can stress. And we are in the coda of the second movement. Molto sostenuto, poco rallentando. So the sostenuto is in the sound, and the rallentando is only a gentle rallentando. In the 3 last bars, I would play a sharp contrast between the forte and the pianissimo, something that you make with the strings, but not too much rallentando, not too much. And there is an arpeggio in the harp that needs to be perfectly in tune with the chord in the winds. So if you don't have it, you have to stop and say, you know, and point this, because it's very important after all this beautiful music that you finish on a perfect chord right in tune with the harp. Now, finale. On string, of course, very active. And not too fast. Allegro non troppo. You see, the first movement is, the allegro is written allegro non troppo, and the third one is allegro non troppo. So nobody can say, you know, it's too fast or needs time. I was mentioning at the beginning what César Franck wrote as a kind of notice. And here he says, this melody in the third movement brings light and brings joy. There is no more melancholy, there's no more darkness. So this movement should bring the light. Personally, I do not make too much drama in this beginning. You could, of course, with the pam 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 pam. It's more like when Mozart starts with big chords and say, okay, now listen. That's what I think it means. And what are you listening to? You're listening to a beautiful melody, frisch, we would say in German. So it's so elegant, I would say, and steady, and listen to them. Balance, you know, the between the lines in the brass, in the winds and in the strings. And then, you know, play the music until the choral. Ah, yes, this is beautiful. Work on this before letter D. Work on this choral, balance it. You can spend a bit of time here, it's important. Phrase it, give it direction. But always molto piano, dolce cantabile. At letter D, very lyrical when you have this answer for the string. You can add portamento, of course, always in a good taste. And then there's this sudden pianissimo in the strings. So all this finale is all about contrast of dynamics, because it's a patchwork of a lot of elements we heard in the previous movements combined together. He's a genius to combine all the melodies. So just make things, reveal the music here, reveal. Don't try to add anything. But if you play the right dynamics, like at letter E, like Ernest, you see this pianissimo and then pianissimo. You can have such a transparent sound in the strings. And the triplets is coming at letter F. I mean, a bit before. There's a hint in the violas, but it's a crucial point at letter F that you get the right tempo from the English horn, you know. So once you conduct the strings in these triplets, here you hear already in your mind the melody of the English horn. It's very important that you get the right tempo here. So please do not play any rubato after F. Be in tempo to just prepare the entry of the harp and of the winds. He wrote les tons exactement la même valeur. So he wants things to be exactly like. So that's beautiful thing. Just keep the tempo. At letter G, third of G, it's a bit tricky for the strings. So have a clear beat, you know, and shape with your left hand. Make sure all the elements come out very clearly. Letter I is the culmination. So that's a moment where you need, you know, the big sound of the strings, but maybe restrain a bit the brass. It's crucial in this symphony to balance the brass with the with the strings, because it should not be overwhelming sound in the brass. Always keep a strong sound in the strings. Again, we have all these fermatas. So as I was saying before, keep them connected. Always keep the pace, you know, do not stop too long. Except 4 bars after L. He writes très long. So that's the moment where you can hold it and surprise everyone by holding it. And when you cut, you give already the next downbeat. Now we're getting to letter M. At letter M, conduct the timpani. Pam, 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 pam. Okay. Do not rush here. It's the tempo is steady. Don't get excited, okay? Because it will calm down again. And we get to the 3/4, the D major, les temps de même valeur. It's after letter O. Here, I keep exactly the tempo how it is. And, you know, it's a spectacular moment, but I would keep it steady. Do you know why? Because you have this timpani playing pam, pam, pa, pa, pam, and it gives an impulse to the entire orchestra. So do not slow down. But you will hear many recordings where conductors slow down. I mean, it's possible, but I prefer not. And then we arrive to letter P, and this is an impressionistic moment. So make something of it. You have this chromatic line going up, you know, and it's a music that could have been written by Debussy. You know, Debussy knew this symphony, of course, and he had a special view on it, but I'm sure he took lots of inspiration from the way it's written. So please here be transparent, be imaginative in your sound world. And we have this moment in the strings, the non troppo dolce, which is before letter Q. So again, do not expand it too much in the tempo. That I think that would not be elegant, but molto vibrato. So you can use here the vibrato and the expression non troppo dolce to make it very interesting. Letter Q, pianissimo, without vibrato here, please, senza vibrato. And we are arriving to the coda. Conduct the harp. If you're a pianist, play play the part of the harp, you will see how interesting it is. And usually we miss it. So here, conduct the harp. You want to hear every note of this harp. This is an angelic moment, a moment of, you know, finally the light is here. It's a liberation. And the brass should be as piano as possible. And Hauptstimme is the harp. Good. Letter S. Before letter S, I push the tempo a little bit. So that's a moment where you need to push the tempo. Otherwise, your coda will be heavy. And you need a kind of jubilation at the end. And for the strings, it needs to be faster. So that's something that is not in the score that you need to achieve, is push the tempo for the coda to give it a very special kick and a moment. So, and you push before S. So yeah, you want to get the piumoso at letter S. And of course, the brass and the trumpets can be really very, very much playing out at the end, especially in the last quavers of the trumpets. And the rest is in tempo. So you have the arpeggio in the strings, and you keep and you cut with a very clear downbeat in tempo. And here we are.
Bravo. That was fantastic. Listen, everyone, if you do not have the recording of the Franck Symphony from Jean-Luc Tingaud, you're missing something special. Download it, go to Spotify, go to Apple Music, go to YouTube, do wherever it is, buy the CD actually. So that's even better if anybody has a CD player these days. You know, Jean-Luc, this was really great because you've given real clarity, some very important points that you've made. For me, one real hallmark is for you to say, trust the score. It's something that conductors are constantly faced with, how far we can go with our interpretation. Trusting that the composer knows better and would have written otherwise is really an important lesson for everyone to hear. So thank you for emphasizing that. I think that that's something that I'm going to draw out as an excerpt for people to hear. We do have a very interesting question, speaking of, and I want to open the mic to my colleague and friend, Maestro Antoine Plante, who is the music director of Mercury Chamber Orchestra in Houston, my hometown, and who gave me the great opportunity to come home and actually conduct his orchestra for a gala event. But he is a formidable conductor in his own right, from period instrument performance to modern music. And il parle français, and he has a question about the balancing of the orchestra to fix intonation. So, Antoine, please unmute and ask away.
Yes, merci, Monsieur Tingaud. So I was just, you said something fairly quick in passing of tricks to, or techniques to tune the winds or a specific part, intonation is specific part. You mentioned something about balancing often fix the problem. I was just curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Sure. Well, you have to give the function of the notes in the chord. So you analyze the in your score the chord and the function of the notes, and you look of how it was orchestrated. For instance, how much you have, how many instruments on the first degree, how many instruments on the third, how many on the fifth and the seventh, you know. And so you will know if one or another instrument has to play a bit out, you know, just to help. Of course, the tonic, it has to be more. And then you balance, then you can just say, you know, I want to hear those three instruments because you're all three, you're on the same note, on the tonic, and then who is on the quint and who is on the seventh, you know, and then you build it and everybody's listening, and, you know, and they will adjust by themselves and listen. They just need these moments. Sometimes you see the sections taking a moment for themselves to balance a chord, you know, but sometimes they will need your help for that, you know, and also they respect a conductor who is able to do it because you really help the players. I mean, that's the fundamental role of the conductor, is to help the players give their best. So that's my advice.
Alors, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to raise a hand or let me know. Otherwise, after being so generous with his time, I would like to say merci beaucoup to Jean-Luc. As I said, this was very revelatory in terms of understanding something about sound and style of these particular works, but more especially about the trusting of the score. I think that's something we will all remember. And I'm grateful to you. I know everybody is grateful for you giving us your wisdom, your experience, and your understanding of this music so dear to your heart. And before we go, I do want you to clarify for the non-French speakers the definition of l'oreille, how it relates to portato.
Oh yeah, l'oreille to
The staccato notes under the legato.
Yeah, it's l'oreille. It's to link the notes, but with a little gap between them. You know.
Voila. It's like portato.
Yeah, it's like portato. It's coming from the. You have this in French music from Gluck already from this time. He writes it. It's a kind of vibrato with the bow, you know, and so you give a little air between the notes in the bow. And so if you have this for the wings, you have to explain what you want. Always be clear in what sound you want to hear. You know, the players are very happy if you can ask specifically and very clearly how you want the sound to be.
Well, you've been very clear with us, and we're grateful to you for your time and for your generous wisdom of sharing. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
The video will be seen on the CMO website and, of course, the YouTube channel. We'll see you on May 1st for Carlo Rizzi and Verdi La Traviata and, of course, Falstaff. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Merci, Jean-Luc.
Merci.
Thank you. Bye.